The enormous crystal halls of the Galactic Medical Council buzzed with nervous energy as hundreds of alien delegates took their seats. Today's meeting would decide something that had never been attempted before, whether humans could be trusted with medical neutrality in space. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes walked slowly toward the speaker's platform, her white medical coat a stark contrast against the colorful robes and natural skin patterns of the alien representatives surrounding her. Every eye in the chamber followed her movement. Some looked curious, others appeared disgusted, and a few seemed genuinely afraid. The Altarian speaker, a graceful being with transparent wings that caught the light like soap bubbles, called the session to order. Her voice carried easily through the vast chamber thanks to universal translators embedded in each seat. We gather today to consider petition number 4847 from the human species. They request neutral medical status for their hospital ships under galactic law. A wave of whispers rippled through the assembly. The Zephyrian delegate, resembling a giant praying mantis with silver chitin armor, stood abruptly. His 6 legs clicked against the crystal floor as he moved to the opposition podium. "This is madness," he declared, his mandibles clicking rapidly with agitation. "Humans are Deathworlders. They come from a planet so violent that most civilized species would die within hours of landing there. Their entire evolution was shaped by constant warfare, predation, and environmental hostility. How can we possibly trust such creatures with the sacred duty of medical neutrality?" Murmurs of agreement came from several sections of the chamber. The Centaurian representative, a 4-armed herbivore with soft gray fur, nodded vigorously. "My people have studied human military history. They have been fighting wars continuously for thousands of years. Even now, different human nations maintain massive armies against each other." Dr. Hayes remained calm at the speaker's platform, waiting for her turn to respond. She had expected this reaction. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy was built on their effectiveness as mercenaries and soldiers. Few aliens had ever seen humans in any other context. From the back of the chamber, a deep, rumbling voice cut through the debate. Admiral Blackclaw of the Korthak Empire rose from his seat, his massive reptilian frame casting shadows over nearby delegates. His scarred hide told the story of countless battles, and his yellow eyes gleamed with predatory intelligence. "The Zephyrian speaks truth," Blackclaw growled, his words translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "Humans are weapons that walk and breathe. I have fought against them in 3 different conflicts. They do not know when to retreat. They do not understand surrender. They will fight until every last one of them is dead, and they will take as many enemies with them as possible." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "These same creatures now ask us to trust them with our wounded? To believe they will heal rather than harm? It is like asking a fire not to burn." Several delegates applauded, but Dr. Hayes noticed that not everyone agreed. The elderly vegan ambassador, whose people valued wisdom above all else, looked thoughtful rather than convinced. A few of the smaller species representatives seemed to be considering both sides of the argument. The Altarian speaker gestured toward Dr. Hayes. "The human representative will now present their case." Dr. Hayes stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. "Honored delegates, I understand your concerns. Yes, humans evolved on a dangerous world. Yes, we have a history of conflict. But you misunderstand what makes us effective in war, and therefore you misunderstand what would make us effective in medicine." She activated a holographic display showing Earth's hospitals and medical facilities. "Humans don't fight because we love violence. We fight because we refuse to let others suffer when we have the power to help them. This same drive that makes us fierce warriors also makes us devoted healers." The hologram shifted to show human doctors working in disaster zones, treating patients regardless of their nationality or beliefs. "On Earth, our medical personnel regularly work in war zones, treating soldiers from both sides of conflicts. They risk their lives not to kill, but to save." A young Regalian delegate, barely past adolescence by his species standards, raised a tentacle. "But what guarantee do we have? How do we know humans won't use medical ships as disguised weapons?" Dr. Hayes smiled sadly. "You have the same guarantee you have with any other species, our word and our actions. But I offer you something more. Every human medical ship will carry mixed crews. Aliens who can verify our commitment to healing. We welcome your observers, your oversight, your participation." Admiral Blackclaw snorted dismissively. "Pretty words from a pretty human. But words are wind. When the shooting starts, when your own kind are dying, will you still treat your enemies?" "Yes," Dr. Hayes replied without hesitation. "Because that's what healers do. That's what the medical oath means to us. To do no harm, regardless of who needs our help. The debate continued for hours. Species after species voiced their concerns or support. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than anyone had expected. By a margin of just 6 votes, humanity was granted provisional medical neutrality status. As delegates filed out of the chamber, Admiral Blacklaw approached Dr. Hayes. His massive form loomed over her, but she didn't step back. "You have your neutrality, little healer," he rumbled quietly. "But words are easy in peaceful chambers. We shall see what happens when real war finds you." Dr. Hayes met his gaze steadily. "I hope you never have to find out, Admiral. But if you do, you might be surprised by what you discover." 3 months after the historic vote, the UMHS Mercy cruised peacefully through the Outer Rim systems on its first official medical patrol. The massive white ship, marked with red crosses visible from space, carried the hopes of an entire species on its hull. Captain James Morrison stood on the bridge, reviewing supply reports when the emergency alarm pierced the quiet atmosphere. Lieutenant Rebecca Foster spun around from her communication station, her face pale with urgency. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the Epsilon sector. Multiple ships, heavy casualties reported." Dr. Elizabeth Hayes rushed onto the bridge, still wearing surgical gloves from a routine procedure she had been performing on a crew member. "What's the situation?" Foster's fingers flew over her console, pulling up the transmission data. "It's a refugee convoy, sir. Mixed species. They're reporting Korthak attack ships in pursuit and requesting immediate medical assistance." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. The Korthak Empire had been increasingly aggressive lately, expanding their territory and showing little respect for civilian vessels. "How far out are they?" 6 hours at maximum speed, Captain. But the pursuing fleet is only 3 hours behind them. Dr. Hayes stepped forward. "Captain, we have to help them. That's exactly why we're out here." Morrison nodded grimly. "Set course for the convoy. All departments prepare for mass casualty intake." The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Medical bays were cleared and expanded into cargo areas. Surgical equipment was moved and duplicated in makeshift operating rooms. The Mercy had been designed to handle large numbers of patients, but nobody knew exactly what they would face. When the refugee ships finally appeared on the viewscreen, even the experienced crew fell silent. The convoy consisted of 12 vessels, but only 7 were still intact enough to maintain formation. Gaping holes showed where weapons had torn through civilian hulls never designed to withstand military attacks. "My God," whispered Nurse Patricia Williams as she watched one of the damaged ships limping along, atmosphere streaming from multiple breaches. The first shuttle arrived 20 minutes later, carrying the most critical cases. Dr. Hayes met it personally in the docking bay, her medical team ready with stretchers and emergency equipment. The shuttle doors opened to reveal a nightmare. Beings of 6 different species lay wounded, some barely conscious, others crying out in languages the translators struggled to process. A young Altarian girl, no more than 5 years old by human standards, clutched a torn wing membrane while tears streamed down her translucent cheeks. "Mama," she whispered in broken standard as Nurse Williams gently lifted her onto a stretcher. "Where's Mama?" Williams exchanged a look with Dr. Hayes. They both understood that this child's parents were likely among the casualties they wouldn't be saving today. As more shuttles arrived, the Mercy transformed into organized chaos. Dr. Michael Thompson worked frantically in Surgical Bay 3, trying to save a Centaurian elder whose 4 arms had been severely burned in an explosion. In the emergency ward, Foster coordinated patient flow while simultaneously monitoring long-range sensors for signs of the pursuing Korthak fleet. The medical staff worked without pause, moving from patient to patient regardless of species. Human hands treated Zephyrian chitin wounds, applied pressure to Rigelian tentacle injuries, and carefully mended the delicate wing structures of Altarian refugees. It was during the 4th hour of operations that the most controversial patient arrived. "We found this one drifting in an escape pod," reported the shuttle pilot, a grizzled human named Marcus who had volunteered for the dangerous rescue runs. "Looks like Korthak military." Dr. Hayes looked down at the unconscious reptilian figure on the stretcher. The creature's scales were dark green with military markings, and even injured, he radiated the powerful presence typical of Korthak warriors. His breathing was labored, and severe burns covered one side of his body. "That's a Korthak officer," said Dr. Thompson, looking up from his current patient. "Probably one of the ones who attacked these people." Several crew members gathered around, their expressions ranging from anger to confusion. A Centaurian refugee, his arm in a sling, pointed at the unconscious Korthak with his good hand. "He kills my family," the refugee said in broken standard. "Why you help kill her?" Dr. Hayes looked around the circle of faces watching her. This moment would define everything humanity claimed to stand for. The easy choice would be to leave the Korthak officer for last, or perhaps not treat him at all. After all, he was probably responsible for many of the injuries they were trying to heal. Instead, she began checking his vital signs. "Because he's injured and we're doctors," she said simply. "Nurse Williams, prepare surgical bay 2. We need to treat these burns immediately." "But doctor," protested one of the human medics, "he's the enemy." Dr. Hayes continued her examination, her voice never wavering. "Right now, he's a patient. That's all that matters." As they wheeled the Korthak officer towards surgery, Foster's voice crackled over the intercom. "Dr. Hayes to the bridge. The Korthak fleet has been detected. Admiral Blackclaw's flagship is leading the pursuit." Dr. Hayes closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with renewed determination. "Continue patient care. All departments maintain medical protocols." The wounded convoy had found sanctuary aboard the Mercy, but their pursuers were closing fast. Soon, they would discover whether humanity's commitment to medical neutrality could survive its first real test. The Korthak officer, now identified as Commander Ironscale according to his uniform markings, remained unconscious as Dr. Hayes worked to save his life, unaware that his own people were approaching with decidedly hostile intentions. The warning klaxons aboard the Mercy echoed through every corridor as Admiral Blackclaw's fleet dropped out of hyperspace like hungry predators surrounding wounded prey. Captain Morrison watched his tactical display with growing dread as 12 Korthak destroyers took positions around the hospital ship. "They are boxing us in," reported Lieutenant Foster from her station. "No escape route available." Dr. Hayes stood beside Morrison on the bridge, her medical coat stained with the blood of a dozen different species. She had been operating for 6 straight hours, but her eyes remained sharp and determined. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Blackclaw's scarred reptilian features. His yellow eyes burned with cold fury as he spoke. "Human medical vessel, this is Admiral Blackclaw of the Korthak Imperial Navy. You harbor enemies of our empire aboard your ship. Surrender all military personnel immediately." Morrison stepped forward, his voice steady despite the overwhelming odds. "Admiral, this is Captain Morrison of the hospital ship Mercy. We are operating under galactic medical neutrality laws. We have no military personnel aboard, only patients and medical staff." Blackclaw's laugh was like grinding metal. "Do not insult my intelligence, human. Our sensors detect Centaurian military officers, Rigelian Defense Force members, and various other combatants. You will turn them over now." Dr. Hayes moved to stand beside her captain. "Admiral Blackclaw, I am Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, Chief Medical Officer. The beings you mention are patients under our care. Some may have military backgrounds, but they are currently wounded civilians seeking medical treatment." "Wounded enemies," Blackclaw corrected coldly. "They attacked Korthak positions and killed our warriors. They will face justice." "They will receive medical care," Hayes replied firmly. "That is what hospital ships do." In the medical bay below, Commander Ironscale stirred on his recovery bed. The Korthak officer had regained consciousness an hour earlier, but remained quiet, watching the human medical staff work around him with growing confusion. These Deathworlders treated him with the same care they showed their own wounded, changing his bandages and monitoring his condition despite knowing he was their enemy. Blackclaw's patience evaporated. "You have 30 seconds to comply, or I will consider your vessel a legitimate military target." "You can't do that," Morrison protested. "We're protected under galactic law." "Human law means nothing to me," Blackclaw snarled. "You Deathworlders think your treaties and agreements give you power over superior species. Today you learn otherwise." The countdown reached 0, and Blackclaw gave the order his crew had been waiting for. "Begin boarding operations." The first sign of attack came as brilliant cutting beams sliced through the Mercer's outer hull like hot knives through soft metal. The hospital ship's minimal defensive systems were laughably inadequate against military-grade weapons designed for war. In Surgical Bay 3, Dr. Thompson looked up from his patient as the lights flickered and emergency power kicked in. "Keep the surgical field steady," he ordered his assistant as the ship shuddered under the assault. The first Korthak boarding party blasted through the hull breach on Deck 7. 8-foot-tall reptilian warriors in full combat armor moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency, their plasma rifles ready for resistance that never came. Instead, they found something they hadn't expected. Human medical personnel continued their work even as enemy soldiers advanced past them. Nurse Williams didn't look up from the Altarian child she was treating when armed Korthak warriors entered her medical station. She simply moved her body between the soldiers and her small patient. "Please be quiet," she said calmly. "The child is sleeping." The lead Korthak soldier stopped, confused by this response. His orders were to secure the ship and capture all military personnel, but nobody had told him what to do about healers who ignored his presence. In the main medical bay, chaos erupted as more boarding parties arrived. Dr. Hayes found herself face to face with a massive Korthak sergeant whose plasma rifle was pointed directly at her chest. "Move away from the patients," the soldier ordered. "No," Hayes replied simply, not stepping back. "They need medical attention." The sergeant's finger tightened on his weapon's trigger, but he hesitated. Something about the human's complete lack of fear troubled him. She wasn't acting like prey or even like a warrior. She was acting like something he had never encountered before. Commander Ironscale, watching from his recovery bed, began to understand what made these Deathworlders so dangerous. It wasn't their weapons or their fighting ability. It was their absolute refusal to abandon their principles, even when facing certain death. More boarding parties spread throughout the ship, but everywhere they went, the pattern repeated. Human medical staff continued treating patients while under direct threat. They shielded wounded aliens with their own bodies, performed surgery while plasma fire erupted around them, and refused every order to abandon their posts. Captain Morrison coordinated defensive positions from the bridge, but his security team was vastly outnumbered. Still, they fought not to win, but to buy time for the medical staff to continue their work. "Sir," reported Foster, "they've taken decks 4 through 7. Medical Bay 2 is under siege." Morrison gripped his command chair as another explosion shook the ship. "All hands, maintain medical protocols. Do not abandon patients." Admiral Blackclaw's voice crackled over the communication system. "Your resistance is futile, humans. Surrender now and I may allow some of you to live." Dr. Hayes, now barricaded in the main medical bay with over 200 patients of various species, activated the ship's internal communication system. Her voice carried to every corner of the Mercy. "This is Dr. Hayes. We are healers. We do not abandon patients. Continue your duties." Commander Ironscale closed his eyes, finally understanding why the galaxy feared these strange creatures from the violent world called Earth. The main medical bay had become a fortress of determination. Dr. Hayes crouched beside a makeshift operating table, using a maintenance tool as a scalpel while Korthak soldiers pounded on the sealed doors. Around her, 200 patients from a dozen different species lay on stretchers, beds, and even the floor. "We need more plasma for the Centaurian Elder," called out Dr. Thompson from across the room. His surgical mask was soaked with sweat as he worked to repair damaged organs while enemy weapons fire echoed through the corridors outside. Nurse Williams moved carefully between patients, checking vital signs and adjusting medical equipment. The young Altarian girl clung to her arm, too frightened to let go. "It's okay, little one," Williams whispered softly. "We won't let anything happen to you." The sealed doors groaned under the assault of cutting beams. Sparks flew as the metal began to weaken, but the humans never slowed their work. Captain Morrison and his remaining security team had positioned themselves at strategic points throughout the medical bay, but everyone knew they couldn't hold out much longer. Commander Ironscale watched from his recovery bed with growing amazement. These Deathworlders were demonstrating the same legendary stubbornness that made them feared warriors, but they were using it to protect the helpless instead of destroying enemies. The cutting beam finally broke through, creating a hole large enough for armored Korthak soldiers to enter. The first warrior through immediately raised his plasma rifle, but stopped when he saw Dr. Hayes continuing her surgery without looking up. "Step away from the patients," the soldier commanded. "This being will die if I stop now," Hayes replied calmly, her hands steady as she worked. "You'll have to shoot me first." More soldiers poured through the breach, but they found themselves facing something their military training hadn't prepared them for. Humans who simply refused to be intimidated, who continued healing even with weapons pointed at their heads. A new alarm began shrieking through the ship's communication system. Lieutenant Foster's voice crackled over the intercom from her emergency position. "Hull breach on Deck 3. Toxic gas leak detected." The leak was in the children's ward. Nurse Williams looked at the sealed door leading to that section, then at the breathing mask she wore for protection against the ship's damaged life support systems. Without hesitation, she pulled off her mask and handed it to the Altarian child. "Stay here with Dr. Hayes," she told the girl gently. "Patricia, no," Dr. Thompson called out, understanding what she planned to do. Williams was already moving toward the contaminated section. There are 12 children in there. Someone has to get them out. She disappeared through the sealed airlock, entering an area filled with poisonous fumes that would kill most species within minutes. The Korthak soldiers watched in confusion as the human woman risked her life to save alien children who weren't even her own kind. Commander Ironscale pushed himself up from his bed, ignoring the pain from his healing wounds. A nearby Korthak sergeant immediately pointed his weapon at the injured officer. "Commander, you should not move. You are still recovering." "Lower your weapon," Ironscale ordered quietly. "These healers saved my life." The sergeant hesitated. "Sir, Admiral Blackclaw ordered us to secure all prisoners." "They are not prisoners," Ironscale replied firmly. "They are healers." Minutes later, Williams emerged from the contaminated section carrying 2 small Rigelian children, their tentacles wrapped trustingly around her neck. She was coughing badly from the toxic gas, but she immediately turned to go back for more. Dr. Hayes grabbed her arm. "Patricia, you can't. The gas will kill you." "Then help me," Williams gasped. "We can't leave them." Captain Morrison and Dr. Thompson joined the rescue effort, using emergency breathing gear to enter the poison section again and again. They carried out children of 6 different species, some unconscious, others crying in fear and confusion. The Korthak soldiers watched this display with growing unease. These weren't the savage Deathworlders from their military briefings. These humans were risking everything to save creatures they had never met before. The final breakthrough came when Admiral Blackclaw himself entered the medical bay, his massive form filling the doorway. His yellow eyes surveyed the scene with cold calculation, taking in the humans still working to treat patients while his soldiers held them at gunpoint. "Enough," he growled. "I grow tired of this charade." Dr. Hayes finally looked up from her patient, meeting the Admiral's gaze without fear. "Then let us do our work in peace." "Your work ends now," Blackclaw snarled. "You harbor enemies of the Korthak Empire. You will all be executed as an example to other species who think they can defy us." The medical bay fell silent except for the quiet beeping of life support machines. Even the patients who were conscious held their breath, waiting to see what would happen. Commander Ironscale rose slowly from his bed, his voice carrying clearly through the tension-filled air. "Admiral, this violates every code of honor we claim to follow." Blackclaw turned toward his subordinate, surprise flickering in his reptilian features. "Commander Ironscale, you should be grateful these humans kept you alive long enough for us to rescue you." "They didn't just keep me alive," Ironscale replied quietly. "They healed me. They treated me with the same care they showed their own wounded, even knowing I was their enemy." "Sentiment," Blackclaw dismissed. "Step aside, Commander." "No," Ironscale said firmly, moving to stand between his admiral and Dr. Hayes. "I will not allow this dishonor." The confrontation that would determine the fate of everyone aboard the Mercy was about to begin. The medical bay fell into deadly silence as Commander Ironscale faced his own admiral, blocking the path between Blackclaw and the human doctors. The massive Korthak leader's eyes burned with fury at this unexpected defiance from one of his most trusted officers. "Stand aside, Commander," Blackclaw growled, his voice carrying the authority of absolute power. "That is a direct order." "I refuse," Ironscale replied quietly, his healing wounds still visible under his medical bandages. "These are healers, not warriors. They saved my life when they could have let me die." Dr. Hayes continued working on her patient, a wounded Rigelian whose tentacles had been severely damaged in the attack. Her hands remained steady despite the weapons pointed at her, demonstrating the same calm determination that had carried her through 6 hours of emergency surgery. "You forget yourself, Commander," Blackclaw snarled. "These humans are Deathworlders. They cannot be trusted. Today they heal, tomorrow they will use their knowledge to create better ways to kill us. Look around you." Ironscale gestured to the medical bay filled with patients from dozens of species. "Do these look like the actions of killers? They risked their lives to save our enemies. They treated me with honor when I deserved none." Several Korthak soldiers shifted uncomfortably, torn between loyalty to their admiral and respect for their wounded commander. They had witnessed the humans' dedication firsthand, seen medical staff shield patients with their own bodies and continue healing even under direct threat. The standoff stretched on for long moments until Nurse Williams emerged from the children's ward, carrying the last of the young refugees to safety. Her face was pale from poison gas exposure, but she managed a weak smile when she saw the Altarian girl safe in Dr. Hayes' arms. "All children evacuated," she reported hoarsely before collapsing to her knees, overcome by the toxic fumes she had breathed. Without thinking, Commander Ironscale moved to help her, supporting the injured human while Dr. Thompson rushed over with emergency treatment. The simple act of one former enemy helping another sent ripples of confusion through the assembled Korthak soldiers. Admiral Blackclaw's rage reached a boiling point. Enough of this madness. He drew his personal sidearm and pointed it directly at Commander Ironscale. You have 30 seconds to step aside, or you will be executed alongside these human fools. Then you will have to execute me, Ironscale replied calmly, not moving from his position protecting the medical staff. The tension in the room grew unbearable. Korthak soldiers looked nervously between their admiral and their commander, unsure which leader to follow. Some began to lower their weapons, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. It was at this critical moment that Lieutenant Foster's voice crackled over the emergency communication system from her hidden position on the bridge. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. It's the Galactic Medical Council fleet, backed by vessels from 12 different species. Admiral Blackclaw's head snapped toward the nearest communication panel. Impossible. No one knew of our operation here. The distress beacon, Dr. Hayes said quietly, never stopping her work. Standard medical protocol. All hospital ships broadcast automatic distress signals when boarded by hostile forces. The tactical situation changed in an instant. Blackclaw found himself facing not just a single hospital ship, but a combined fleet representing most of the galactic community. The Altarian medical cruiser Healing Light took position alongside human destroyers, while Centaurian peacekeeping vessels surrounded the Korthak fleet. Admiral Blackclaw, came a new voice over the communication system. It was the elderly Altarian Medical Council leader, her translator conveying calm authority. You are in violation of galactic medical neutrality laws. Withdraw your forces immediately. This is Korthak space, Blackclaw replied, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. We have jurisdiction here. Not over protected medical vessels, the Altarian replied firmly. You have exactly 10 minutes to withdraw all boarding parties and retreat beyond the neutral zone, or face the consequences. The Admiral's tactical display showed him the hopeless nature of his position. His 12 destroyers were now surrounded by over 30 ships from multiple species, all united in their condemnation of his actions. Even his usual allies had refused to support him in this violation of medical sanctity. But it was the reaction of his own crew that truly defeated him. One by one, Korthak soldiers began lowering their weapons and stepping back from the human medical staff. They had seen too much, understood too clearly what these healers represented. We cannot win this fight, Commander Ironscale said quietly to his admiral. And we should not want to. Admiral Blackclaw holstered his weapon with visible reluctance, his military mind recognizing defeat even as his pride rebelled against it. All Korthak forces, withdraw to the ships. We are leaving. As the boarding parties retreated, Dr. Hayes finally allowed herself to look up from her patients. The Rigelian she had been treating would live, as would most of the others. The cost had been high, 17 human crew members had died protecting their patients, but they had succeeded in their mission. Commander Ironscale was the last to leave, pausing at the medical bay entrance. Dr. Hayes, he called softly. She looked up, meeting his eyes across the room filled with healing refugees. Thank you, he said simply, for showing me what honor truly means. 3 days later, the story had spread throughout the galaxy. The Korthak Empire found itself completely isolated diplomatically, with even former allies imposing trade sanctions and military restrictions. Admiral Blackclaw faced court-martial for violating protected medical vessels. But the most significant change came in the form of applications to join human medical ships. Beings from dozens of species volunteered to serve alongside the humans who had proven that Deathworlders could be healers as well as warriors. The UMHS Hayes, named for the doctor who had died protecting her patients, launched 6 months later with a crew representing 23 different species. Commander Ironscale served as its chief security officer, his own journey from warrior to protector complete. And throughout the galaxy, a simple phrase became an unwritten rule of warfare: never attack a Deathworlder hospital ship.